Well, perfect, Natalie. What other are there any statewide issues you'd like to cover?
Yeah, I'm going to go into Proposition 123. Proposition 123 is one that I've followed since springtime. The process to get something on the ballot here in Colorado is uh, where you start in springtime is where the proponents present their language and a ballot question is set. So that's where you first set that, and then you're able to then go into a petition process, which we're fortunate to have here in Colorado at some levels. You can't petition every government in Colorado, but with Prop 123, um, I became aware of that in springtime when it was going through the title board. And what it's doing is taking revenue from income taxes that goes into our state's general fund. Right now, it's this measure will take 0.1 of 1%, 1/10 of 1% of income tax coming into the general fund right now, which funds education and a variety of projects that one might normally think with of government. It also, of course, we also always have mission creep in government. One of the main things, but the general fund is the big pool of money that funds all of these different things. And Prop 123 proposes to take again that percentage, which right now is about $300 million a year, but it grows by how much income tax revenue grows. So $300 million is a forecast right now, and it can easily change. They do forecasts multiple times through the year. Could grow, could skyrocket, could become smaller. Takes that money from the regular big pool of money and it puts it into a brand new government program called the State Affordable Housing Fund. This new State Affordable Housing Fund, and I'm going to stop saying affordable right now that everybody got the gist, and it will become subsidized housing because that is the more accurate term, right? That $300 million a year is going to go into this new government controlled taxpayer subsidized housing fund. That pool of money, once it made the transfer from the big pool of funds over this new one, it is now exempt from government revenue limits under our taxpayers' Bill of Rights. So we'll never see a refund or rebate. Rebate's a better word because Tabor generates a rebate to us of money collected over a certain cap. And we allow government to grow a moderate rate, and money, when it goes beyond that, we get that rebate back. Well, when this Prop 123, the subsidized housing plan, moves that money into this new state bureaucracy, none of those funds will ever be rebated back to us as we have under Tabor. The money is then split between the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, which is a really cool government name. They shorten it to OEDIT. So it goes there, and then it probably goes to the Public Housing Authority. That's the best that the proponents can define that as, or TAFA. The rest of the money then will go to local governments. And there'll be a lot of hurdles and problems when it goes to the local governments. I'll go into a little bit more detail there. When it goes into this funding has now been split between state government and between a local government. It's going to fund a bunch of government programs. The ones that are probably the most concerning is government land banking. So that'll be government now aggressively going into the property market and competing against mom and pop, the small family. And when you have a government with deep pockets competing against mom and pop and a small family or whoever it may be, that does not help with housing affordability. You have a new competitor in the market, and that's not a proper role for government to start with. That's one thing. It'll also offer concessionary loans. Concessionary loans mean the government is offering substandard loan terms that are below what the average person would get. But jumping to the local part, there are hurdles there also. Any local government that wants to be eligible for receiving these funds, which were once part of our Tabor refunds, It's this money going from the general fund again in this new one. Any of the local governments that want to get their share there must agree to increase government controlled subsidized housing by 3% per year each year they're in the program. In addition, it creates a 90-day fast track permit process just for these new government controlled taxpayer subsidized units. So the average Joe who wants to go and get a permit would be pushed to the side, while the 90-day fast track permit process is used for the government subsidized units. That's a big problem. One, it provides picking winners and losers, but the average person is losing out. Just today I was reading about like a 12-week delay, 12 weeks just for somebody to get a window permit, a regular contractor who's used to it. And now we're going to make the system more complicated like that with something like 123, which is a terrible, terrible measure. So, and I'm just going over the list. There's a variety of problems with the amount of government control that Prop 123, which is, I think, still coming out with a massive, about, it might be at least a couple $1 million, if they haven't already started, I may have missed it, TV campaign about affordable housing and how great it'll be, and how there's firefighters and there's teachers and they don't have units, and we've got to pass this plan, we've got to do it now. There are so many problems. I don't see exactly how this, first of all, where this, just going back to the funding, what you're doing is they're taking money, as I've described them so many times to, yes, reporters, and it doesn't get relayed enough, is that we're taking money from, right now, we have Tabor rebates that have this year were the tune of $750. We have future Tabor rebates coming to people that could be, again, forecast change, but could be anywhere from hundreds of dollars down to maybe a couple $100. Prop 123 is going to take a portion of that. In some years, it may end up taking all of the Tabor rebates. But right now, whatever that figure may be, because I think they've got some figure in there, $40 to $80 per person. It could change at any time, but it doesn't matter. That $40 to $80 is still that person's Tabor rebate. The way it's set up now with Tabor, each and every taxpayer benefits. Prop 123 is going to take part of or all of your rebates moving into the future and give it to a very select amount of people so that they can have government controlled subsidized housing. The controls that are in place should give a lot of concern to people. There is an administrator who can be picked of this whole program. Again, they're determining concessionary loans, so they could be setting interest rates. They're in charge of a government land banking program. They're dishing out money to local participating governments who have to fit those hurdles of increased density, multifamily dense subsidized housing by 3% per year. There's an administrator who's in charge of this, who is supposed to be picked with no less than 72 hours notice to the public, and can have a contract for up to 5 years to administer hundreds of millions of dollars into something I don't think government should be doing, certainly not more of in the first place. Started, looking at, well, what if it's going to, we don't even have a good idea of all the money we're putting into these programs. Another thing Prop 123 does is put money into more homelessness programs. There are recent reports, there was just I hope I have it right, 1.6 billion spent into homelessness programs. I think that's right. Sorry, I've just done so much. There was a 600 million, I know for sure, but I think another one just recently came out through Common Sense Institute, was either 1.2 billion or 1.6, but we don't even know that that's all of that. Then going to the housing end of what are we doing right now? We have got the state of Colorado that I am just, this one I do want to get correct, so bear with me. just one second, that we have just been, you'll see it in the blue book, it's page 41. We've already got $200 million going to housing programs. We just put another 1.2 billion. This is page 42 of the blue book. I don't throw a lot of figures out. 1.2 billion from the American Rescue Plan, which is federal money, just went into housing. We haven't even started that yet. And then we've got a knee-jerk reaction like 123, which is going to have all of these additional dollars that used to be our TABOR refunds benefiting people. If it's $750 like this year, that's half of somebody's rent for a month. I mean, these are meaningful numbers. And if we're making a permanent action with 123, giving away TABOR rebates forever, there's no way to even calculate how much that is in value that you're giving away for what is going to be framed in these TV commercials as affordable housing that has to happen now because firefighters and teachers aren't able to get a house. But you're giving away a lot, and you're giving away, if you're not a firefighter or teacher, you're giving away your refund, and you may very well need that. I mean, we've got to cost a dozen eggs at $4 a dozen. Okay, so there's a long other list of problems with 123, but it is one of the greatest concerns that I have on the ballot.
Definitely. 123 is totally nefarious and a real serious problem for anybody who believes in free markets or wants to see free market solutions to the housing crisis here in Colorado. I mean, like you said, this high density subsidized housing is going to actually push out developers out of specific areas so they can't come in and have entrepreneurs create their own programs. We have a government competing against them. Well, who's going to win that fight? We all know where that's going to go. And do we really want to see these high density, buildings all across the state that are totally controlled and completely out of place, possibly out of place with the rest of the community?
Well, two other things. The way I look at it is like in Lakewood, we're kind of landlocked. Or, look at other municipalities. So you're going to infill as much as you can, and then you're going to build up. But at what point in time might it be looking to say, sorry, single family residential is just actually a selfish thing. And we should, we've used the carrot. Now it's time to use the whip. And we see that in other government actions. I don't know where we stop there. And I can't help but mention, and I just really haven't had enough time to do the research on this, but honestly, I do have concerns about our water in government. Not water in government, our water in Colorado. And if what this measure 123 is proposing to do is they want to build like 10,000 units, I think, per year, additional government controlled subsidized units. Well, from building experts I talked to, right now with the availability of what's out there, and then also because of the COVID economic shutdown by the government, the supply is off, right? We're able to get in about 40 to 45,000 units built a year. So if Prop 123 this government controlled housing is going to take over what's available, both in terms of actual physical real estate, but then available workforce, supply, all these things to get to their goal, that means the government in this action is taking over 25% of the building supply. I did another way to calculate it in my mind. And with the way I did it, I came up with really there's regular private sector, there's the current government sector, subsidized housing, which we already know there's a lot of money going into these programs already, whether it's homelessness, housing, whatever. But you're going to have private sector. I'm trying to get my hands in here. I'm a very handsy person. Anyway, we got the third that is private sector. We've got the third of the government controlled taxpayer funded stuff going on, housing. And then we have Prop 123, which can't replace any of what's going on now with government stuff. That all has to be new. In that sense, it's a third of the mark, third of what's there. So whether you say a quarter of the market now go into government hands or a third, I don't know how that helps the average Joe. I don't know how that helps. And you're taking your TABOR refunds to start it. So that it may sound like an innocent measure, but I see so much harm from it. It's hard to express it.
You know, double whammy. You lose your tax refund money, your tax rebate money. You have less money for your family, for your housing, yourself, and then you have to compete against when you're looking to buy a new home. Well, prices just went up for a lot of middle class people because now the low income, the subsidized housing has kind of changed the market, changed that market structure now to limit what's available for the middle class, what's available for people who are able to be self-sufficient financially.
Yes. Yeah. I think it says something in itself that both gubernatorial candidates have not endorsed Prop 123. The Joint Budget Committee, you're familiar with the
Mhm.
legislature. During the hearing to set the question for this, the Joint Budget Committee has um, some members have concerns about 123, and that goes from both aisles. Because if the way this formula for funding it is structured, the proponents are clear, they want the Tabor rebates. But let's say there's no Tabor rebates. We haven't gone over that cap. They haven't chewed that up. Then it just goes into the general fund. Prop 123 says they don't have to fund these programs. Well, then it creates issue. You've created at the local level. Are you going to shift it to where the local has to take care of it? But the JBC, I think it's Senator Zenzinger, said, well, yeah, but there's kind of been a contract then given a handshake with the voters, let's say. That's not her exact words, with them that we're going to fund it. So even Zenzinger, I believe, had some concerns because, well, what about education or this or what might be eventually a higher priority? You've now said we have to put it in housing and reduce the flexibility of the Joint Budget Committee. So I think that speaks something that some nonprofits are in favor of this thing, but looking at the actual governments, from both sides, there's issues.
Hmm. Well, that is some sense of hope then for me at least that there's some recognition even on the Democratic side that there's a problem with this and people who might normally support some sort of government paid for housing see some problems and some issues with that. I think that does speak well.
Yeah. So I'm happy to leave you with that. And remember, a couple things I do want to mention is just for website. If people want to know more about Prop 123, I did set up a website. I'm also although I'm a member board director for Tabor Foundation, I'm also the registered agent for No on Prop 123. And if you go to noprop123.com, there are more articles, a little more of some of that information that I tossed out that is maybe a little easier to review the second time. So again, that's noprop123.com.